Hey, Garrett, welcome.
Hey, Michael. Good to see you.
Yeah, great to have you on. So your company is called Clarity Ops. Take a moment and just share a little bit more about, who do you help? What is the work that you do?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. Thanks. Clarity Ops is a boutique consulting firm. It is really niched and laser sharp focused on specifically operations. And we do kind of a few things that are bespoke to our process. We focus on waste, inefficiency, and bloat with a few primary objectives to reorganize for scale and growth. That leads to typically increased gross margins, which then afford the business to take, their growth initiatives to market in a more faster, effective way. So it's sort of this trifecta of a trifecta.
You talk about on your website that and you kind of alluded to it here as well, that your ideal clients are companies that are experiencing kind of fast-paced growth, right? Where obviously there's a lot of things going on, processes are being broken. As you said, there's a lot of waste and inefficiency. So you help them tighten up their processes, which makes a lot of sense to me. But I'd love to hear, how do you identify and target those companies? Because if somebody, if your targeting was just based on industry, right, there's lots of ways to just use that. And whether it's LinkedIn Sales Navigator, Apollo, other, list services, you can filter for, what is their revenue? What is their geographic location? What industry are they in? Job title. But I've never seen a clear filter. I mean, to select, fast growth. So I know you can look at headcount, if it's headcount is changing or number of employees, said another way. But how do you all in your company think about identifying the ideal client? What is the signal that you use to know who to kind of target and go after?
Great question. And I think if there were a magic bullet, it would have been invented, So I'm only a few years into Clarity Ops. And I have to be honest, I thought, based on my track record of building a business prior to getting into the consulting domain, I thought I had it actually figured out. I thought that, creating a sales pipeline or lead pipeline and then, converting to sales and learning everything I've learned would be pretty easy. It turns out it's been much more difficult than I anticipated. And I think primarily that's because the problems that Clarity Ops solves are typically very complex, and even the businesses don't understand the roots of the problems. And so, I do have some thresholds that we, are sort of a barrier. We won't go below in terms of a revenue threshold. So typically it's around 15 million. And typically around 75 to 100 is the barrier to entry in terms of employment count. So those are a couple of signals we look for. The other thing I found to be really effective is in our content, just being razor sharp clear about the problems we solve for. And for businesses that don't know their problems, that is sometimes more difficult for them to hook in. But for businesses that do know their problems, it becomes very easy, and that opens up the door because we're speaking the same language. One other thing I'd say is that increasingly is becoming a door opener is just the network and the word of mouth and the proof of solution for our customers, and then people talk, and that increasingly really becomes the best way to work with new customers. I think that will be the better road in the future.
There are consultants out there landing dream clients, charging premium fees, and building the kind of business and life that you want. And here's the thing, they're not smarter or more talented than you. They've just got the right strategy. If you're tired of guessing your way through the next steps, wondering if you should raise your fees, change your marketing strategy, or find better clients, it's time to stop spinning your wheels. At ConsultingSuccess, we've helped thousands of consultants just like you cut through the noise, get crystal clear on their goals, and build businesses that thrive. And the best part, it all starts with the free Consulting Success growth session. This is your chance to get personalized guidance on how to break through your challenges and build the business you deserve. No fluff, no gimmicks, just real strategies that work. So why not you? Why not today? Go to consultingsuccess.com/grow and book your free session now. Let's take the guesswork out of growing your consulting business. Again, visit consultingsuccess.com/grow today. Yeah, so let's hit kind of rewind on that tape for a moment. And you launched this business. I know you've had previous success as an entrepreneur building a business, but not a consulting business, and not focusing specifically on operations, from my understanding. So when you decide to launch this business, how did you get your first client? What were you? Did you have that same level of kind of laser sharp, kind of that precision or narrow focus of who the ideal client was in terms of 15 million plus, 75 plus employees? Just walk us through what did that look like to get the first maybe client or two or three coming in the door?
Yeah, it was, well, I want to be clear. I have never advertised. So I decided 15 years ago that authentic content that is well aligned to the problems that you're solving and the customer that you're serving has been the best approach. And I still believe that. So don't advertise. In terms of, taking Clarity Ops to market, my approach was I went to my entire network and said, I have a new business. This is what we do. Do you know anybody that's facing these challenges and problems? And could you refer 3 people to me?
Why do you ask for 3 people?
Because it's a concrete number and it's objective. I'll just say one other thing. It's not 10. 10's too many. One is you strike out immediately if they can't think of one. So 3 allows them at least to get you 1 and perhaps up to 5. So anyways, but please play devil's advocate.
No, that's great. I appreciate you jumping in on that. And I was going to say, so I'll kind of come at it from a different angle because I wanted to explore this and make this as valuable and tactical for all of our listeners and viewers. But that number, right? Some people would feel uncomfortable, like, oh, I'm asking for too much. And you strike me as the kind of person who does, really would dislike overly promotional, salesy, pressure sales tactics. Like, I don't get that vibe from you at all. And I know that we've just met, so I could be completely off the mark on that. But I'm wondering, so the thought that you just, or your explanation of 3 in terms of this kind of strategic positioning of that, almost like an anchoring type of approach in from a pricing perspective. But do you just feel comfortable in saying, yeah, I need, like, do you know 3 people? Was that just a natural thing for you to ask, or have you learned that has worked well for you? And then what was the actual result of it?
The honest answer is I learned that from a coach that I hired. And, we were just going through go-to-market strategies. And I was, one of the topics was, what is the best strategy for generating leads? And that was his advice to me. And it's at immediate here, it sounded right. And it turns out it's been great. It's been great. And I do agree with you. And I think increasingly as we move into Gen Z, the salesy stuff, at least I'll speak for myself, forget about Gen Z.
Wait, you're not Gen Z, Garrett?
Yeah, I am. I paint my beard gray. My preference is to be honest. And
what's the result been? So if you think about for every, I don't know if you know how many or remember how many people you reached out to initially, was it 20, 50, 100, but whatever that number was, what percentage of them do you think actually said, yeah, here's 1 person, 2 people, 3 people, I don't know anybody? How would you kind of break that down?
I haven't actually calculated the data, but I'd say the average is 1. And especially, because a revenue threshold of 15 million isn't, I think anything above 3 million, you're in the top 2 percentile. So it's extremely niche.
Did you bring that level of specificity and kind of request of I'm looking for, we're going to help companies that are 50 million above, 75 employees and above. Did you put that into your initial message?
Great question. No, I didn't. And I paid the price dearly because I brought on the wrong customers. So it was the first 7 months, engaged a few of the wrong customers and learned my lesson, which is okay. And I knew it. I knew it having just built business, but my mistake is I actually didn't apply it to the customers who were me.
Yeah. Do you think that was a mistake? Like in hindsight, would it have been the right move for you to be that specific in the initial message? Or do you think that actually going a little bit broader and then having more conversations, working maybe with the wrong people, that ultimately served you? Or do you think if you were more specific, that actually would have just helped you kind of accelerate and see better results faster?
Wow. That's a great question, Michael. That's a really great question. I think my inclination is to say I would have been better off. I would have been better off setting the boundaries out of the gate. And the reason I say that is, I wasn't an MBA with a few years of Deloitte under my belt or 10 years of Deloitte under my belt. I wasn't coming in as a consultant. I actually was coming in as a guy who's been in the trenches. I have the battle scars. I have the proof of concepts, and I have the wins to prove that I know what I'm doing. And I didn't need a ramp up. I didn't need to cut my teeth, if you will. And if I did, I think that probably would have been good, because I could have made some mistakes at a lower threshold.
Did you have any concern or hesitation about narrowing in so quickly? So I recognize you didn't do it right away in those initial messages, but it sounds like pretty quickly you decided, hey, I need to draw some boundaries in terms of what I want to focus on and target in the work that we're all doing. Was there anything in your mind going, no, like we need to, not 15 million. If we say 50 million, somebody at 10 million, might not reach out to us and we could help them? Or like, was there any of that going on in your mind of concern of being too narrow?
The only thing that was, and I think still is a concern for me sometimes, is I'm always, we've heard the old adage, the riches are in the niches. And I've always, part of me has always been afraid of niching because it's so narrow, but I just continued to push in there and pursue it because in my belly, I think it's right. And I think that's where the solutions are too. That they really are in the micro and in the details. And then you get to blossom those into the macro.
Yeah. I mean, we've done a lot of studies and surveys at ConsultingSuccess, with hundreds, sometimes thousands of people participating in them. And what I consistently see through those, as well as just through conversations and, working with hundreds of clients, is that you can find maybe like 1 or 2% of the time that somebody will be very successful in consulting or build a firm or solo by being broad, but like 90% plus of the time, the real success comes, or you can see it when people have narrowed in, they've niched down, depending on how you pronounce the word. So I think that what you're describing is very true. It's still very hard for people early on because our minds we're kind of like programmed to think about loss aversion and, what may I lose if I narrow in too much? And then the other mistake that I see people making, and I wonder if this resonates with you as well, is when people look at success, they often look at larger, more established companies. So you talked about like Deloitte, right? You go to Deloitte or you go to McKinsey or LEK or, any of these large consulting firms, their website will show like 25 capabilities, and their messaging will say that they transform the world with innovative solutions. Like these big promises that feels like it could be for anyone in any industry, anywhere around the world, right? People look and go like, oh, this is what I should be doing. But what they always miss is that that's not how these firms started out. like, to get to that first, $1 million, 3 million, 5 million, even 10 million, they generally had like a really clear focus, and only after getting to those points did they start to branch out and add more capabilities and say that they can do everything. Does that resonate with you? Is that kind of what you've experienced as well?
That totally resonates with me. 100%. As a matter of fact, prior to launching Clarity Ops, I spent a ton of time studying BCG, Deloitte, McKinsey, the big four. And I was perplexed, and I shouldn't have been. I think this part has been my war with going broad versus niching. And I was like, "What? So what do you do?" So what do you do, Deloitte? You help with the economy. You help solve global warming. You know what I mean? To your point, really big. And so I know that a board member of mine encouraged me. He'd said this over the years, Garrett, just be careful to not try and boil the ocean. That's not where it's at. I thought that was really great advice, especially when I've always built digital products and services. I've never sold knowledge, and that's been a really interesting journey to define the knowledge solutions for your customers so that they're tangible and they actually meet their real life needs.
Yeah, I was going to ask, what's been the biggest difference? Because I think a lot of people will resonate with what you just said. They come, their backgrounds, even if they've been consulting for many years, they may not necessarily still feel that comfortable with selling, marketing, promoting. And my kind of, hypothesis, or at least my observation around that, is because when you work inside of an organization, what you're selling is usually the product or the service of the company, but it's all about the company. It's not about you. And then when you start a business, if it's not a specific product, and oftentimes people just they are the product, if they haven't done any productization. So the initial focus has to be on them. And that's not something they're very comfortable with really putting in the spotlight. So I'm wondering, as you made that shift into starting your consulting business, and really where, the product is you, and I know you have a bit of a team now as well, but how did you think about that? What are the distinctions or differences that you saw between selling knowledge and expertise compared to selling, let's say, a product of some sort?
Well, I think the biggest distinction has been understanding the problems and converting those into easy to understand solutions. And so my third business, but this is before I started building. I sold swimming lessons. That's 25. And it was really simple. If you have a child that doesn't know how to swim, we'll teach them how. It's really easy. My next business was we sold photography. It's really easy to understand. You're going to sell photos of people that hire you. Really straightforward. But when you sell a product to reorganize the organizational governance of the business, what on earth does that mean? You know what I mean? And or when you sell a product that guarantees we're going to increase your gross margin, they understand that, but the how of it is extremely complex.
So do you lead with when you're describing what you do, or when you have messages on, let's say, your website, LinkedIn profile, when you meet somebody at an event, they say, Garrett, what do you do? What do you lead with? Do you lead with, we help companies, with 50 million in revenue or above, or 75 employees or above, to improve their gross margins by X%? Is it that kind of message, or is it more about the process, inefficiency, waste? How do you convey what you're selling, when what I'm hearing you say is that to a lot of people, what you do is it's a bit of magic. They're not necessarily waking up every day going, oh yeah, I need to have my business processes reorganized.
Yeah, because they don't realize that that's what's required.
So what's the messaging? What do you lead with to get people's attention then?
So it varies. Like it depends on the context. Like LinkedIn, it's about the Hermosi value prop statement. You say who the target is, what you're going to give them, how it's going to relieve their pain, and what their outcome will be. Right? It's kind of this one sentence value prop structure. And then in person, if it's a casual conversation, before I even say anything, I'll say, "Tell me about the problems you're facing." So and so what I've learned. Oh, if somebody comes through in our contact form, we take them straight to what we call a clarity quiz, because they've already seen some of the big statements on our website. But I really think the best pitch is a response to somebody who has communicated the problems they're facing.
And how do you find the people who are communicating? Is this like they post on LinkedIn, or how do you actually find them?
Yeah. So you're basically asking about our lead gen strategy.
Well, you tell me, is that like, so you're saying that you found the best way to respond is to kind of tap into or join the conversation that a potential buyer has started themselves. That's what I heard you say, and maybe I misunderstood.
I think the best response is to respond to data received from the lead about their problems and their pain.
Got you. Okay. So you're saying this is based on the conversation you have with them. You're talking, they tell you there's an issue, you're listening to what that issue is, and then you frame your program, your solution based on the language that they're using. So if they're talking about gross margin, you're going to talk about margin. If they're talking about processes or inefficiency, you might focus more of your message based on that. Is that accurate?
A little bit. What I like to do, I like to pull threads, because it's, I think, again, going back to my experience has been founders, CEOs, and C-suite, they have symptoms or signals of what they think the problem is, but usually they're wrong. They're not based on data, it's based on feelings. And so what I like to do is take a Socratic approach, pull threads, and start drilling in to get insights. So then I can say, okay, based on what I heard you say, here's what I think your problem is. And here's how I think we could solve it. Like we do a 60-minute discuss 60-second. That'd be amazing, by the way.
It's all with AI, just everything's quick these days.
Right. But typically in 60 minutes, I can get a real good feel.
I know we can't go into all the questions that you ask, but if you were to, you talk about kind of pulling threads, what are maybe one or two questions that you find that you ask consistently because they tend to elicit a really valuable or helpful or powerful reply that you can then use to identify those gaps and transition to talking about your solution?
Yeah. Do you have variance in your product or service deliverables in terms of your turnaround time?
Great. Okay.
Do you have variance in terms of the delivery of your products or service when it comes to quality?
How often do people say to you, Garrett, what do you mean by variance? Like, is that the term that they typically they get right away, or do they need to know a little bit more about how does that apply? Because to me, like I feel like I understand obviously I understand the meaning of the word variance, and I understand how that applies to, is there consistency? Is there potential waste because things aren't being done in the same way over and over? But I just wonder, is that like a very technical term in the industries that you work, or?
I haven't experienced it, because it's a synonym of inconsistency, variance, inconsistency. So I haven't experienced. My team may have, so I don't want to answer on their behalf. But yeah, I haven't personally. But even just listening to you say it, I think it's worthy of considering, because.
Well, but the reason I do like it, or at least from my perspective, and this is why I was wondering if this is why you do it, in many selling situations, that 60-minute conversation you have with buyers is one of the best ways that you can demonstrate your knowledge and expertise, and you can deliver real value to the buyer, right? And when you ask a buyer questions and they don't have a good answer, or if you're saying things in a way where it's like, I haven't really thought about it that way before, that starts to open up gaps, I always find, in the buyer's kind of confidence that, maybe I don't have all the answers, or you're asking about our variance. I have no idea. Like, I'm sure there is, but I don't know what percentage our variance is right now. Like, and it's like, okay, you're right. So that whole process, I would imagine, would be very, very valuable. And that's why I was wondering if you were using that kind of language there.
You're coming from the other angle. Yeah, it seems to be, it's a well-received question, Other questions we ask are your people confused? And is there infighting? You find that there's more arguments and disagreements internally about who, what, where, why, when than you prefer. Is it affecting your culture? Some other questions are, what's your employment churn rate? What's your CSAT? Do you measure CSAT? Do you measure the satisfaction of your customers? And if they're willing, I always like to ask, are you satisfied with your gross profits? Or do you have a hunch that maybe you're bleeding profit and you don't know where it's coming from? Maybe you do.
And is this 60-minute conversation something that you're doing complimentary, or is there a fee for it?
Complimentary. Yeah, totally. So it's, because I think it's just, it's the cost of doing business is what I've determined. I don't want to charge somebody, to do an initial discovery call.
So I think the pushback that some people might have, just in wondering, well, I'm sure you have your reasons. Like, well, does it make sense to spend 60 minutes talking to somebody who may not be a buyer? So what does your qualification process look like? How do you decide whether it's worthwhile for you to get on a 60-minute call with somebody?
Yeah, 3 things. The 2 criteria we opened up with the show. And the third is, have you decided that you need help?
And how do you ask that? Is that they have to fill in a form? They respond by email, initial call? How do you gather? Because the first one, right? So it's 15 million plus in revenue. Second one is 75 employees to, I think you said about 100 or so employees. And you said the third one though is, do they know that they need help, or, looking for that?
Yeah. I ask it frankly. We ask it frankly.
Before you get on the call with them, the 60 minutes?
Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely. So recently, our most recent inquiry came in a few days ago. It was co-owners of a construction company in Arizona. And it was only one of the owners that reached out. And he took our clarity quiz. And he was definitely qualified. He needed help. But we wouldn't move forward until his business partner also took the clarity quiz. And then without him seeing it, and then I required that they compare notes and be united about their pain and the things they want to solve. You're right. So I just said, frankly, we can't go any further until you take this next step with your business partner who's a co-owner. So I'm just frank about it. And I require my team be frank about it too, because I'm a big fan of being straight up.
So yeah, that's great that you want that your approach is to be straight up. Give me a little bit more insight into what's going on in your mind, in the early days of the business. I know you're still relatively, new in this business, but again, somebody from the other side or a different, vantage point might look at that and go, yeah, but maybe I'll lose that potential lead. And should I just get on a call with them? I think you and I both know, right? That's not the right way to do it. I think so. What you're doing right now to me is the right way, because the other way you end up maybe getting on a lot of calls with people only to find out that it doesn't move forward because of all kinds of issues. But so I guess my question to you, Garrett, is what makes you feel comfortable, and were you always comfortable with potentially halting the sales process until you got more alignment up front?
Yeah. So I think this just comes with being in the trenches. Like I've made that mistake so many times that I've just learned it's not worth my pain or my time. And also, what ends up happening if, let's say, you engage, you end up spending an insurmountable of time just trying to break through the mindset stuff. And you end up fighting things they should have already dealt with and concluded. For example, I really need you. Like, I am determined to get the outcome that I want, irrespective of the amount of work I need to put in. And as it's within my budget to get it done, I want to partner with you so that we have transformation and we prepare for scale and growth the right way. If you're not there, then my job could be futile. And now it becomes this other layer of stress. And now instead of, for me as a consultant, staying focused on solving your problem, I'm trying to be a therapist. And I risk a brand hit when we can't accomplish solving your problems because you couldn't get your mind there and you hadn't decided that you actually really wanted to solve your problems.
Makes sense.
All those things, you know, I don't want to, I don't want to do business that way.
How do you price your services? Kind of with as much detail as you can share, you know, what does an average engagement look like? And how did you arrive at that kind of pricing spectrum, as well as how did you arrive at the way that you structure or package your expertise and knowledge?
So there's a couple of, a few different variables here. There's purchase our tools as templates and you DIY. And so we'll basically license our tools to you.
And what does that look like from a pricing perspective? You can just kind of give rough numbers. Like we're talking like hundreds of dollars, thousands of dollars, tens of thousands of dollars.
Yeah, thousands of dollars. Yeah, it'd be in the 10 plus thousand. And it's also based on time as well. There's done with you, which tends to be the most common just because we're experts in our tools and we can get you there faster with more accuracy.
That would be kind of level one, if you will, lowest priced, 10,000, give or take, is they get access to your tools. They don't own the tools. They are essentially licensing them. So are they paying an annual fee or just a one-time fee?
We have 3, 6, and 12 month.
Okay. Got it. So you have different lengths. They get access to it through, let's say, a portal or something where everything is available to them. Okay. And so that's the done or do it yourself.
DIY. Yeah.
DIY, right. Okay. Then you have done with you. And so that is they're still using that tool set, but this time you're guiding them through the implementation and you're there to answer their questions as they work through it.
Yeah. We're actually arm in arm.
What does that engagement look like in terms of length and starting price point?
Yeah. Yeah. So within, that pillar, again, typically it's 3, 6, 12 month. And then we also have like, as consultants, we'd call it upsell, cross sell, but we have, for them, it's a add-on service where we have a maintenance program. And I added that as a side note because what I've realized is the law of entropy, even after you transform, the law of entropy is right there on their back, haunting them. And, psychologically people tend to revert, because of gravity, they revert to the old ways. So we always recommend some sort of adopting one of our maintenance programs that will just protect their investment. It's an insurance program, basically.
Okay, I have some sort of specific questions for you on this, and everyone will know this the style that I always like to ask. So forgive me for being direct here, but the price structure of the done with you. What's the starting point on price for that?
It actually starts at $5,000.
Okay. So that would be like the 3 month, $5,000.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's like, we're talking about 3 hours a month.
Got you. Okay. And why would somebody select a 6 month or a 12 month if you also have the option for a 3 month? Meaning, like, what is the incentive or the reason that somebody might want to engage out of the starting gate with a longer term engagement?
Context could be, limitations of procurement. Context could be bad timing, but at least we want to break ground. Context could be we just want to test. We're unsure. We're feeling a little gun shy. So let's just do a low level trial run. The pain isn't so bad that we need to jump in right now. Context also sometimes with 3 months is they need to ramp up resources, but they want to get some things going and prep for when those resources show up. So there's a whole host of different reasons. So,
but if I twist it to, or like look at it from the other side, because that's what I'm actually really wondering is why would somebody go for 6 or 12 months? Like, is it a pricing thing? Like, for example, the longer the engagement, it's cheaper, like on a kind of monthly basis, or like why would people not? To me, it seems like, yeah, okay, I'll start with 3 months, see how it goes, then I'll add from there.
Maybe one good thing to clarify is a 3, 6, or 12 month engagement does not substantiate their time commitment on the weekly, on the monthly. So you could do a 3 month engagement doing 20 hours a month or 3 hours a month. You could do a 6 month engagement, 3 hours a month or 25 hours a month. So these are just commitment blocks. And then inside of those commitment blocks are micro commitments based on the problems and the challenges that we want to transform.
Got you. And your pricing will change based on, so you have the time block, but then you also have the, let's say, hour or commitment block within that. So within 6 months, you're going to have, so your pricing will change. You have potentially multiple price points within each of the 3, 6, 12.
That's right. Yep, that's right. Multiple. And that's all based on the customization. And I was going to say too, there's a third program, which is based on part program purchase and part revenue achievement. So, sometimes they might not have the budget, but we'll do a pay performance clause where, we're satisfied with the compensation up to a degree, but then we'll get a premium on a revenue target, which they have to pay more, but, companies are willing to let go of $1 million if we can recover 5 million in their gross profit.
So they pay less up front. Like your retainer or initial investment that you're receiving is lower, but you have the potential to earn more than if they paid everything.
Yeah, that's right. And that just comes with our confidence in being able to deliver the outcome.
What percentage of your engagements right now would be that performance side?
Yeah, 10%.
Okay, got you. You talk about the maintenance. I'm really interested. How do you price that? It sounds like you're saying, hey, this is your insurance policy. You really should have some form of ongoing support, commitment, focus on these key areas. How do you price that? What does that typically look like?
Yeah, it's typically based on an hourly rate, and it's that hourly rate goes across the humans from the team that participates. We have a junior, senior, and then executive.
Got you. Can you talk about your team for a moment? Because you started this, from my understanding, yourself. Today, you do have a team. Can you just describe what that team looks like in terms of number of people and the roles that people play?
Yep. So we have 15 people right now. That would be outside of me. Yeah. Everybody is employed. And what I wanted to do was build experts in all of the functions and just functions. So we have finance, customer support, IT, marketing, and operational business development. And and then we plug their expertise in based on the problems that come our way. And that's really the idea. Is you have mechanics that are experts in, the business engine, and we assign those mechanics and their expertise based on the problems we're trying to solve.
How do you decide when to hire people? So you start with just you, now you're at 15 plus. What was your thought process or decision-making criteria? Was it a certain level of revenue, certain amount of money in the bank, certain number of clients, or something completely different? How do you decide when to actually, make those hires?
Yeah, mostly it's based on demand, and the revenue supports the demand, and then it grows. And then in terms of hiring, again, going back to recruit is never a magic bullet, but it's in part being in the network, meeting people, and then good old fashioned understanding the proper strategic elements of finding great people when you go through the recruit.
Yeah.
But by the way, Michael, one question I didn't answer, want to make sure I did, is, are longer term engagements less expensive? Yes. So we give price breaks on longer term.
I mean, we see that as well. Like I think some people might look and go, well, yeah, just like the shorter engagement is always better. And I think if I went back in time, my younger self, I probably would have viewed it that way too, that shorter is better, less commitment. As time has gone on, and, I've personally invested hundreds of thousands of dollars into working with my own coaches and mentors, and something that my cousin, who's my co-founder in ConsultingSuccess, we've done many of this together. We've done some ourselves, but we always believe like we need to eat our own dog food, right? So we run a coaching and training company for consultants. We need to also invest in our own coaching and training. Otherwise it wouldn't make sense. And so early on, the shorter kind of mindset was, I think, much more common. As our business has grown, our team has grown, we've learned and experienced more things. I view longer term engagements as a secret weapon, because when you commit to something longer term, you're making a commitment to see it through. And I find early, like more junior, or more, I should say, novice or early stage business owners have shorter term mindsets. They're expecting, amazing success in a very quick, short period of time. Whereas I think as you mature as a business owner, you recognize, and the sayings of things like, Rome wasn't built in a day, or stuff. It's like you go like, oh yeah, of course it was. Like, to build a really great business, you really want to give yourself more time, because it's not always going to be up and to the right. Like, you're going to have some wins, you're going to have some losses, but as long as you're really making progress towards your goal long term, it'll be well worth it. So I think it's nice that you have that.
Really well said. There's another benefit there. It definitely is a secret weapon, but I found businesses that will commit to longer term engagements are more secure. They're better partners. They can afford more. They are great with accounts receivable. In other words, they pay on time. So it's kind of a twofer.
Yeah, it's a good one. Okay, so before we then wrap up, two questions for you. One, what has been the biggest challenge in this business that you've experienced so far? Again, you've gone from just getting started to a solid, business, 15 people. What's been the biggest challenge that kind of comes to mind for you?
I'm surprised by this, actually, but still today is finding the right customers. I just like, if you could see in the office here, we've got a couple of big giant whiteboards, still working through how to articulate with clarity, go figure, the problems, the solutions, and how those are perceived by the businesses we want to work with, and being able to do that quickly. That is still a challenge. It's still a challenge. It's always been a challenge in every one of my businesses, but this domain has been especially interestingly challenging.
What would you say is the biggest lesson that you've learned?
Maybe it would be coined as a lesson. Maybe it would be coined as a validation. So I don't know if we could use those synonymously. But my hypothesis going into Clarity Ops was that the majority of businesses operate in chaos. Their cultures pay a price, meaning their people live in that chaos and they're paid to live in that chaos. And they fall victim to the stat, which is 9 out of 10 businesses go out of business. And so my hypothesis was, I believe the reason typically is not product market fit, although that's probably definitely a portion, and typically not because they run out of money. It's because they don't understand the vitality of the operational engine, what Carnegie called the engine of success. Businesses tend to view a business as operations or culture. Everything's operational. Like, everything in a business is made up of people, process, and performance. And this unified sort of dance of all of these moving parts, it's all ops. And what I've been so pleased, I know it sounds a little, morbid, pleased to find out is that so far I'm 100% right.
Yeah.
It's operational.
Right. Well, to me, it makes a lot of sense. I think for those consultants who are joining us right now, who are very early stage, I would suggest don't worry about operations. That's your focus shouldn't be on operations yet. But for those who have established businesses, those who are growing, then operations is such a big piece of it, because as the business grows, it's like the engine is getting almost needs to, not necessarily needs to get bigger, but there's more complexity. There's more to manage, right? You have to serve more clients or bigger projects or bigger expectations, all of that requires really good systems. And I think that's where, you often hear people talking about like the 1, 3, 10 and so forth, right? Like you get to these different levels of revenue, you start to break certain processes or things that we used to work don't work anymore. So I think the work that you're doing will always have a place, because there's always going to be operations that are not running as smoothly as they should be.
Sure. Yeah, I appreciate that. A mentor of mine said once to me that I will never forget: you can only build as high as you dig deep. And he brought me to this actually plot in the land in Seattle. And he showed me where they were building a skyscraper. And I actually have a photo. Maybe I'll send it to you, Michael. And the photo is a 13-story hole where they are building infrastructure, rebar, steel, to withstand the weight and the pressure of the 150 stories they're going to build up. And I just think it's such a great portrait for any business that actually wants to win. Most businesses don't even go in, I'll be happy with, making 500 grand. I don't think they do. Maybe they do. Or I'll be happy with making 250 grand, or I'll be happy with making 5 million. Usually people, like most entrepreneurs, they want to win. They want to build a great business, And I would contend it's all about the foundation. And in there is that operating room, that engine.
Definitely. Well, I will say, Garrett, and many of our listeners and viewers will already know this, but at ConsultingSuccess, our kind of premier coaching program is called the Clarity Coaching Program. And so your company name being called Clarity Ops, I think we're both aligned and believers in the importance of achieving clarity and how beneficial it can be for business. But I want to thank you for coming on. I know there's much more that we could talk about, but let's make sure that people can learn more about you and about your company. So where's the best place for them to go?
I think the best place is the website, clarityops.co. If you go to .com, you'll end up somewhere else. .com was way too expensive.
There you go. We'll link that up in the show notes. So yeah, clarityops.co. We'll link that up in the show notes. And Garrett, thanks again so much for coming on.
Yeah, thank you so much, Michael. Really great chatting.